In this tutorial, I'll be giving a short demonstration of how you can put to use all the tools you've been learning to 3D model an experimental setup. I'll be using the NX3 experiment and also the various pictures and diagrams of the experiment on the PDF document Study of an Oscillating Mechanical System Driven into Resonance. So I'm going to start by drawing the inner cylinder, the object that acts as the torsion pendulum in the experiment. I need it to hover above the ground, so I'm drawing the circle first, using the push-pull tool to raise it up slightly, and then click to set it. I click the upper surface again, but this time I press Ctrl to create a new starting face. I finish off the cylinder and erase the base to get it to hover. I now move on to drawing the rotating mirror. This will only be a rough representation. For this I'm going to use the Follow Me tool as well as rectangle and line. Firstly, I'll draw the shape. This is best done by drawing a vertical rectangle first, making sure to angle my camera low down so SketchUp can intuit what I'm doing. Using the line tool, I carve out the shape I'd like to be lathed. Then I zoom out to get an idea of proportions, and I see the shape is a bit too wide, but I don't have to draw it again. I simply use the scale tool, select the object and squash it along the red axis. I'm now ready to use the Follow Me tool. As I mentioned in the tutorials, it's often easier to select the path first before selecting the tool. This will remove the hassle of having to drag it along the path, and there we have the rotating mirror part. I now want to accurately draw a vertical line starting from the top of the rotating mirror. For this I'll use two guidelines, one parallel to the green axis and the other parallel to the red. Where they intersect is where I'll start the line from. Now I'll bring it up to a sensible distance and align it with the blue axis so I know it's vertical. I want there to be a similar structure at the top of the line as to the bottom, but flipped upside down. To save me from drawing one again, I can make use of the copy function from the Move tool, as well as the Flip Along tool. But firstly, I'm going to group the structure to make it easier for the next time I use it. I select it all, right-click and choose Make Group to have it all as one component. Now I'll copy by using the Move tool, selecting the shape at the center of the top mini circle, pressing the Ctrl key, and dragging up along the line I just drew, far enough to be clear of the original. To flip it upside down, all I have to do is go to the Context menu, flip along, and choose Groups Blue. Select the shape again with Move and then drag it till the end of the line. The mirror itself cuts the small cylinder into a semicircle, so we'll have to cut the cylinder in half. If you remember, a triangular prism-shaped crystal was also inset into the small cylinder, so we'll have to create that too. To halve the cylinder, I can use the previously drawn guidelines for reference, although the protractor tool could be used here to measure the angles precisely. Since the cylinder's top surface is not reachable, this makes measurement rather difficult. One alternative is to slightly cheat by taking the line tool, hovering it over the previous guidelines, hold down the Shift key on your keyboard to attach a zip line, and this gives me a constant line of reference. So once I hover it over roughly where I want to draw, and once it turns blue, I know I've got a vertical line that accurately attaches to the cylinder. This marks out one of the 90-degree points. One click and the zip wire attaches properly to the guideline. Another on the cylinder gives me my reference line. I can now use the rectangle tool, connect the opposite sides of the cylinder, and I'll have halved the cylinder. All I need now is to remove the curved surface. The triangular prism will fit into this alcove. I can create that by joining the top and bottom here, as well as the sides. To make the crystal translucent, I can pick the Paint Bucket tool, go over to the drop-down menu, Glass and Mirrors, and choose an appropriate translucent paint. All I have to do now is click on the surfaces I'd like to paint, and there we have the crystal. And now to create the container that stores the oil, I need to draw another cylinder that surrounds the torsion pendulum. but to be accurate, I should find the center of the pendulum first. Remember, the cylinder hangs above the ground, so I also need the bottom of the cylinder to be some distance away from it. To begin, I can make the whole model temporarily translucent by going to View, Face Style, and choosing X-ray. This makes it easy to see what's happening inside my model. I can use a few guidelines to locate the center point below on the ground level. One, by extending the vertical line already drawn, and another by attaching one end to the red axis and scanning the other end along the previously drawn vertical guideline until it turns green. The point where the two lines cross is on the ground and directly below the center of the torsion pendulum, which is where I want to be. Now I simply draw the base and raise it with push-pull and remove the top surface. I can also color these new surfaces transparent in a similar manner as the crystal. For the moving mirror and the fixed mirror, I can make things a bit easier by just copying what I did for the rotating mirror. I'll select everything relevant to the mirror with the Select tool and by holding the Shift key. From here, it's Move tool, hold Control and drag away to get a copy. Notice since I didn't delete my earlier guideline, I can now reuse it to align the new mirror with the rotating mirror a bit better. But the mirror needs fixing. To get rid of the overhang, I can just select those parts with the Erase tool. And I can also color in the visible flat surfaces of the crystal again with the paint bucket. Now, by grouping this mirror, I can make selecting it the next time a bit easier. We need two, so let's make another one. I need to angle the mirrors correctly, so let's flip the top mirror, which is the moving mirror, along the red axis. Now, here's where a SketchUp tip comes in handy. I want to now rotate the mirror 90 degrees with the Rotate tool, but to do so accurately would be rather difficult, since there's no flat surface for me to work from. So instead, I can use the arrow keys to align it with the red axis, specifically the right arrow key, and now I can align it on the piece and it will always stay perpendicular to the red axis. 2 more rotations and it's oriented. A similar process can be applied to orient the fixed mirror and also the rotating mirror. Now, before I can align the mirrors properly, I can create the lines representing the laser beam. Firstly, I should find the midpoint of the mirror by turning on X-ray again. The red axis and green axis will be my guides. Now I can align the two mirrors, making sure to grab the mirror surface of the moving mirror at its center by drawing guidelines across the crystal surface with the Line tool. Once I've aligned the mirrors, I can delete the lines. It's a simple matter of continuing the laser beams using the inference directions now, and we're almost there. Time to draw the laser in. I'll start by drawing the cylindrical housing. The front of the laser will be represented as a series of concentric cylinders, so it's a simple matter of using the Circle tool and the Push-Pull tool, but I can also add a bit of detail with the 2-point Arc tool, Line tool, and the Follow Me tool. A procedure similar to making the lathe part for the rotating mirror. Now for the body of the laser, it's simply one more concentric layer, Push-Pull, and then aligning the end of the laser beam. Finally, I can color in the laser beam by going through a few steps. Firstly, I'll select all of the laser beam lines, then I'll click on the Paint Bucket tool, navigate my way to the Styles tab, Edit, and then choose Color by Material. When I go back to the Materials tab and choose a red color, all I need to do now is click on one segment and it should change all the lines to red. There we have a rough 3D model of the laser setup in NX3. To make a plain background, I can navigate my way back to the Paint Bucket, Styles, untick Sky, and choose a reasonable background color. With the Paint Bucket, I can also color in the rest of my model. And we're ready to export. I can do this by going to File, Export, and choosing 2D Graphic, and SketchUp will export the current view of the model. If I want a higher quality image, I can go to Options and increase the number of pixels.